researching the story of the UFC, in the late 90s, they did not have it on lock. They were pretty much going to be banned. Everyone knows about this at this point. John McCain called it human cockfighting. It was called a blood sport. Bob Arum, according to the Times, called the fighters competing, quote, a bunch of skinheads, close quote. Venues would not host them. They would not. And many of the higher ups at the UFC even said that they were on the verge of bankruptcy. Then a businessman in the state of New York opened up his venues to the UFC, and that was Donald John Trump. The Trump Taj Mahal would host fights, and Dana White even said, quote, nobody took us seriously then except Donald Trump. I would never say anything negative about Donald Trump because he was there when other people weren't. He would say that in 2018. The Ultimate Fighter also helped give rise to the UFC, but do you believe that Trump saved the UFC?
No. They oversell that. I mean, it's funny. I saw there's a filmmaker named Bobby Rozek. So what day is it today? Wednesday. So on Sunday, he had a screening. He's got I thought it was a movie, but it turns out it's a 8-part documentary miniseries called American Promoter. But there's like a 10-year-old interview in there with Dana White. And Dana doesn't insult Donald Trump, but he refers to him and Mark Cuban, because Mark Cuban used to have a television channel called HDNet where he would put on, low-level fights, but he tried to make one big fight and it failed. But he refers to them as like fly-by-night people who don't really know what they're doing. It's like, I'm not saying that he doesn't genuinely like Donald Trump now. He quite clearly does.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear. You asked about the historical relevancy. Here's the thing. This is the problem with it. It's like, was what Trump did, it was 2 events basically, was what he did helpful to this organization at that time in a general way for the reasons that Dana White cited? Yes. Trump was helpful to an organization that did not necessarily have a lot of places to go to. And to be clear, remember, this is a sport that is regulated by each state apparatus. They have a regulatory agency called an athletic commission. The New Jersey Athletic Commission, which is, of course, Trump's casino facilities were in New Jersey. The New Jersey Athletic Commission is a very good commission, and it's a prestigious one. And so to have MMA at that time regulated by New Jersey they were trying to show signals of legitimacy to the broader public, like, hey, look at how above board we are. We're not running away from regulation, we're running towards it. We're not going to Tupelo, or we're not going to go to the Gulf Coast where some random ass Mississippi commission's we're going to New Jersey, right? We're going to go to the premier standard in regulatory athletic commission excellence to do this. And then you need a facility to do that that's got a little bit of a name, a little bit of cachet at that time. And Trump had some of that, and Trump was open to it. And so, he plays a helpful, but I wouldn't call it super meaningful role if you're actually looking at the other mechanisms at the time, the other levers that had to get pulled or were unable to be pulled, that really were the things that saved them or sent them into the next level. What I would say is, imagine you're on a hike and you took a break on the journey, and you found another set of hikers there who are campers, and they shared with you some water, they shared with you some provisions, and then you went on your way. You'd look back and you'd be like, oh, that was really helpful, but you weren't starving, you weren't you could have made it to the next stop and got water there, kind of a thing. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where I think what they do, they're trying to spin a political tale, obviously. But if I can give it one more good faith reading, they're vindictive. And so they count enemies very closely, but they also reward loyalty very strongly. And I think that they liked that. I mean, obviously they were really appreciative of that. And so now that there's a political crossover and more than that, there's more than just political crossover, but now that those worlds are enmeshed, they're trying to gin up this hey, if it wasn't for them, we would have died. That's not true, but these were like-minded people who wanted to be in business with each other for quite some time. Let's put it that way.
And we'll touch on the political angles of the UFC, which there are plenty in a moment, but they said that they were on the verge of bankruptcy. Were they also playing that up, Luke, or were they close to bankruptcy?
No, they were not doing well. They were not really selling well on pay-per-view to the extent that they could even get on it. There was a time where they were banned on pay-per-view. They were still enmeshed in all different kinds of regulatory battles. Again, they were winning some of those. And at the same time, like more than that, they were just trying things that weren't working. Like, so for example, um, you may not remember this. They hired at the time like Carmen Electra to be like the face of for a little while because they were trying to find, someone who was cool but kind of hip and edgy and, you know, a beautiful woman, next to these like rough looking guys. They were trying to not soften them exactly, but I guess make them more accessible. And they were trying to get them in Maxim magazine and all kinds of stuff. And this was, these were, I think they had spent on 1 year, like, I forget exactly what the number was, but millions and millions of dollars on these ad campaigns that ultimately did not work. And so they were deep in the hole. I think by the time that the worst they ever got was they were 40 million in the hole, which is which by the way, like, dude, now they could just,
For sure.
they could wipe their ass with $40 million. But at the time, this was, they were on the verge of obsolescence or, pure elimination. But what they keep trying to tell you is like, if it wasn't for those Trump shows, it's like, dude, those were 2 shows in a broader calendar of shows in a broader set of years. Like, yeah, it was helpful, definitely, but this was not make or break by virtue of just that association.
Right. It wasn't heroic.
No, and dude, Trump's casinos fucking sucked at this time. Like, he needed them too. Like, that's the other funny part about it. Like, no one ever says this. And it's like, dude, Trump's casinos were not doing awesome at that time. I mean, they might have been still somewhat profitable, but they didn't last much longer. Like, these were properties that just did not succeed. He needed them too. Like, this is why he was open to it. Now, the one thing you have to say about Trump, if you're going to just talk about his likes and dislikes, he has, I hate to say this, but it's true. He's always been a fight fan. He's always been a fight fan. And that makes a lot of sense. This is the funny part to me, is people will accuse me of having Trump derangement syndrome. And this is my favorite for a few different reasons. But the funniest one to me is like Trump will say something like, obviously, like insanely stupid and dangerous. And you'll be like, wow, that's insanely stupid and dangerous. And then half of the people who like Trump will tell me, oh, you have Trump derangement syndrome. And then the other half of his supporters will be like, no, actually what he said was great and we love it. It's like, well, you two need to reconcile this. But the point I wanted to make about this is, Trump fought really hard and succeeded in getting Foreman Holyfield at one of his facilities. And he had to use all kinds of underhanded tactics to do it. And I say that in a very particular way, which is, if you didn't know anything else about him, and I was able to tell you what he did to get that fight there and the games he played, you'd be like, oh, yeah, you mean he's a typical scumbag boxing promoter. Like,
With the active war clause, is that what you're referring to?
Well, I mean, but like at his core, like, why did he go into fighting? He might like 2 guys fist fighting, but dude, this guy is built for the fucking circus. He's built for the Carney show because he can win there. He can absolutely win there. I mean, he has some losses there too, but like manipulation inside of that world is like second nature to him. And this is why it's always so funny to me when people are like, oh, you have Trump derangement syndrome. I'm like, you believe a boxing promoter. Like, that's who you trust. You trust the fucking judgment and wisdom of and by the way, not even a very good one, but like a fucking boxing promoter, like the least trustworthy people on planet Earth. And this is your this is the guy you think has solved our problems. This is your North Star. It's like fucking baffling to me that people can. Same thing with Dana White. Like, oh, Dana White tells, like, he's a fucking fight promoter. Their job is to lie and scheme. Like, and I'm being serious here. There are every promoter, good ones and bad ones. Even the ones you like, even the ones that are good at it, especially the ones that are good at it, these are not trustworthy people. These are not truth tellers. These are manipulators, because you can't do that job effectively if you're an honest broker. And I'm sorry to say it that way, but it's just the truth. Boy Scouts are not effective fight promoters. Dirtbags are.